All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And just to remind you, if you've just joined us, this is Time with the Captains live here on TV3. Well, quickly, let me just introduce to you our captain for the month of October. He's the chief executive of a leading brand in Ghana in the financial services industry. His most cherished interests are deeply rooted in the nurturing, coaching and mentoring of the youth and has since guided several young professionals to have professional careers. He began his career in the banking industry as an investment officer. He's also developed and managed some startup companies. He's an alumnus of the Hull University in the United Kingdom with an MBA degree. He was a key member of the team that handled the first two initial public offerings on the Ghana Stock Exchange in 1992. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Bond Savings and Loans Company PLC, George Ofosu-Hene. Chief Executive Officer of Bond Savings and Loans PLC. Thank you very much, Mr. Ofosu-Hene, and good to have you on the program.
Glad to be here.
How does it feel to be here today?
Well, exciting.
Why?
Very exciting. Well, we have, young people who are striving to make a difference. And the objective that we have is to help these people chart the proper path and make sure that they are focused in terms of what they want to do. And it's exciting to actually, provide some support, with that sort of
Right. Before we started this program, I was engaging the students and asked them if they ever heard of Bond Financial Services, and most of them said, yay. And I said, what do you know about Bond Financial Service? And all they said was, the song, the song, the song. You have become such a household name. How did you do that?
In actual fact, it started with a certain deep sense of ensuring that we make a certain difference as far as the industry is concerned. And when we started the business 10 years ago, it was an area that had seen some growth as far as operations are concerned. In actual fact, I always say that when we started, there was a giant in the industry, and that giant created an atmosphere that everybody seemed to follow. We decided to go a totally different way, because when you make the customer your focus, it changes your approach, and it also helps you in the process of ensuring that you become what the customer is always looking for. So we made a difference. We started making a difference, and we've always made it a point to make a difference. We cherish relationships, because in the industry, you do one or two things. You either become transaction-related or you become relationship-related. We decided to actually make a difference, and it was based on ensuring that we cherish the relationships that are created. Some of those relationships have stayed with us over the past 10 years, and still some of the very good companies that we deal with.
We're going to come back to talk about issues industry-related, but could you kindly just walk us through your path to success as a businessman? Where did you start from?
Well, George, I was born in Co 50 plus years ago, born to parents that were in the education sector. My dad was a headmaster for secondary school, and my mom was a teacher. So I started primary school in Suhum, that is in the eastern region. I don't know whether you guys know that place. If you don't know it, when you hit the road towards Kumasi from Accra, you find this place where there's an overpass. I always say that when you get to the overpass, look to your left. You see this shabby-looking primary school. That is where I started from, as a young kid. I remember very well those days. It wasn't easy because my mom was a teacher and was actually teaching in the same primary school. So it created a certain level of discomfort because you needed to ensure that you operate in a certain way. One of the things I remember very well is the fact that in primary school, I was forced to actually write with my right hand. I'm left-handed to a fault. I actually can't do anything else, with my right. Everything I do is my left. So imagine this young man, young child coming up. And those days, that was in the 60s. Using your left was a problem. Like you're in class, a question is asked, and by the time you realize my left hand, goes up, and that will attract some canes. And because my mom was a teacher, she actually enforced it, and was forcing the teachers to ensure that this man doesn't write with his left. So I do everything with my left, but because of, primary school beating, I have to write with my right. Those are some of the things that I remember, from primary school. And the other thing I say is that, I always talk about the fact that I don't meet any of my primary school, mates. My wife went to Rich Church, school. So sometimes you're working with her and, oh, this is, so and so, my primary school mates. And I realized that I don't have any of those things. My point is that it doesn't matter where you start from. Everything is dependent on how focused you are. Because if you look at where I started from, and sometimes I say that, those days, growing up, sometimes you needed to reorganize yourself in terms of some of the things that you were taught in primary school because of some of the deficiencies, those days. But there were also good things, about some of the things that happened in primary school.
Did you always want to become a banker?
I think that at a certain point, I developed an interest in banking. And I say it's, always that my interest in banking was not actually the profession. It was the way the people dressed.
How did they dress?
Bankers, those days, you are actually trained to dress properly. Because, you are going to talk to people, you want the people to trust you with their money, trust you with their business. You must appear in a certain way. I remember very well that I had this friend who was working in a commercial bank. I used to go to him those days only because I was fascinated by the way they dressed. It was only those places that you go and people are wearing ties. Those days, all the ladies used to wear uniforms. But even the uniforms, you could see that these people are very well dressed, very well organized. So I'll go there, he'll say, George, sit and wait for me. And that's what I was looking for. So I'll sit there in the reception and just watch people go around, dressed nicely. Everybody operating in a certain way. You can see that the whole place is organized. There's no situation where people are doing things that are not related to, serving. And that is how my banking, interest developed. So when I finished national service, I remember very well, I took an application to every single bank in Accra. And the whole point was that I wanted to get into banking. And I got the kind offer, of working in Merchant Bank those days. I remember when I went for the interview, I was asked the question of, so who do you know in this company? I mentioned a name. The name was somebody that I used to be with in University of Ghana. And they said, mention a better name. This person is just, a young officer. I said, well, I don't know anybody else. Because I think that they were expecting that the level of confidence that I had exhibited, maybe there was somebody who was providing support. There wasn't anybody. I had actually decided that I wanted to work in a bank. And it was because I wanted to dress in a certain way. But I got into banking and realized that it is also something that I will have an interest in. And that is how it has developed over the period. Sometimes when I talk about it, people laugh that, oh, why did you go into it because of dressing? But that's what I was attracted to. And really, I mean, I say it without, worrying. That was the initial thing. But when I got into it, I actually became, very, very interested in it. And since I started working in a bank about 30 years ago, that's what I've been doing.
I'm going to quickly get to the students for them to start asking their questions, but just to quickly draw that part of the discussion, I want to find out from you what you make generally about the rate of unemployment in Ghana today.
I think it is part of development. Development in the sense that if you look at it, there are quite a number of schools that we have currently in the system. We are churning out quite a number of graduates. Okay? If we don't have a situation where industry is also spreading at a certain rate, you definitely will have the situation where you are coming out and you don't have jobs to do. But I don't think that that should be a major source of concern because we need to reorganize ourselves. Why do we always all come out and we are expecting to be employed? We can also get into business. We can also start something on our own. And I'm sure some of the entrepreneurs that we have here will start thinking about what they can do all by themselves. The opportunities are there.
There are major difficulties for them.
There's no doubt about it because there isn't anything that starts from the level of flourishing. You always start from a certain level. I always say that Bill Gates didn't start and say that I'm going to be the richest person. He started by focusing his attention on developing something. He developed it to a certain level, focus, and then he's able to get to where he is. Everybody can do that. It is not something that we need to worry about. Everybody can do that.
Are you not fascinated by the disconnect between the high growth in GDP and the low levels of employment which we experience?
Like I was saying earlier, it is actually part of the process. We will, once we have the intention of developing industry, we will get to the point where a lot of these, unemployed people will be able to get into the system of being employed. But it goes through a certain process. We need to focus attention on developing businesses. It's one of the things that Bond focuses attention on. How do you develop businesses? You provide the support that makes it possible for these businesses to grow. Once they grow, they expand, they are able to absorb people.
Let's bring in our audience now. I'm going to come to you, students from GIJ as well as GIMPA, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. If you've got any questions for the Chief Executive Officer of Bond Savings and Loans PLC, please raise up your hands. We'll take the questions and answer them. Who's our first? Who is first? Okay, we've got some hands up. Great. So you just mention your name and you ask your question.
Okay, my name is Jijo. My question is, what are some of the challenges you came across whilst you started working, right from school, when you went into the banking industry? What were some of the challenges that you encountered, and how did it help you to get to the position you were at this moment?
Okay, challenges you encountered when you came out of school. Another question?
My name is Freeman Stephen, and my question is, what is your primary advice to the upcoming youth who are interested in entrepreneurship?
Okay, we'll take another question.
I'm Fauzi Masood from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Yeah, so generally, down moments are inevitable in everybody's life. In your down moments, what are the things that picks you up again?
All right, so we'll take these three questions. The first one was the challenges up to school.
I think that with respect to challenges, and I'm sure all of you face that, I'm sure Jijo has that problem. I call it whirlwind. Whirlwind in the sense that there are too many distractions. And those days, those were some of the problems that I had to deal with. That you have so many things that are trying to engage your attention. And the problem actually becomes how to stay focused in the midst of that. The second point is that it is also very difficult to find people who want to provide mentorship. And those days, I've always talked about the fact that it wasn't the style of bosses to engage with subordinates. I had this boss who, even when you enter his office, raising his head to even look at you to say hello was a problem. If you say you want to talk about something, he will either point to the tray or he will point in a certain direction. Leave whatever, and then you move on. So as a young person, it actually becomes very difficult to develop the way you expect. Because let us face it, if you don't get the direction that you require, sometimes what you do is that you grope in the dark and look for some way of developing yourself. I'm happy that people like you are at places like these. And the point is that you want a certain level of direction. That must truncate the process of groping in the dark so that you don't go wandering in the bush before you get to the point where this is actually what I want to do and I've found a way out. That was one of my biggest problems. And as a young man, I'd like to go back a bit. When I entered the university, one of my biggest problems was the fact that there was too much freedom. When you come from sixth form, where you are in a confined zone, everything is structured. You go through a certain process, change lesson, start lesson, breakfast time, lunch time. And then we entered the university and was like, hey, this is freedom. You mean I can go to town and come anytime? I remember very well, I was in Sabah Hall, the cafeteria was just across, and in the cafeteria, they were serving those days, bubra. And it's like, you can drink whatever you want. That level of freedom, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, is a problem to deal with. And if you don't take care, these days, in fact, those days, we didn't have Facebook, Twitter, and all the things that go with it, and the various things that you would do with your phones. Okay, so the distractions were not even this bad. Right now, it's even worse than we're having, because even sometimes a friend was talking to me and was telling me that these days you guys go to lecture halls and your phone is actually lying on your lap as you are listening to and then sometimes it goes buzzing and you are forced to look at it because a friend has sent you a message. The distractions are the problem. And how to deal with the distractions sometimes become the issue. So I found that I was actually, more like becoming too engrossed in the freedom that the university provided. And I remember very well, there was this third-year student. Those days, we used to call them matured students. These were the students that sometimes you find his wife and children coming to visit him. One of them called me and sat me down and said, this place is not like this. This place is not for enjoyment. You are here for a purpose, and you must make sure that you achieve the purpose. In fact, initially, my reaction was of anger. Are you my father? Are you the one to advise me? But I didn't show it immediately. The guy walks away. Later on, I sat down and said that this guy doesn't know me from anywhere. I think God has sent him. And it actually turned my life around at the time. The freedom is a bit dangerous.
Freedom
and it
is
actually
indeed a danger.
Comes through,
and did that lead to any difficulties for you finding a job after school?
Finding a job after school, it wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult because there was national service. So we started national service. Immediately you were posted. I was posted to National Board for Small Scale Industries. And that is where I started learning project work. So it was a learning ground for me. And then after that, like I said earlier on, I started the process of looking for a job in a bank. It took me something like 2 months of going around ensuring that I could get a job.
Right.
If I hadn't gotten a job in the bank, I would have continued working with MBSSI because they had already offered me a job, after national service.
Right.
So I didn't have to ask.
I think the next question had to do with your advice for young entrepreneurs.
Yes. I think that the advice is very simple. What I want to say is that entrepreneurship is something that everybody can do. A lot depends on making sure that you have a passion for what you are actually focused on. Sometimes it starts with you deciding that this is something that I have as a talent. It could be a talent, maybe it's sewing, maybe it's artwork, maybe it's something that relates to, the arts. You can act, you can sing. Then you start looking at how you can develop that. Many of us are too difficult when it comes to progression because of one simple thing, the fear of failure. It is something that limits us. And let me tell all of you, it is not only you. It happened to me. It has happened to a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and it is something that you have to deal with. There is absolutely nothing wrong with failing once you understand that it is part of the process. So don't feel limited that I want to get into this business. I want to be an entrepreneur, but I am afraid that I will fail. You can fail, but make sure that the process is actually getting you to where you are. Don't go through the process and fall back. I want to give you an analogy. The point is that you must have the destination in mind. Assuming that I ask any of you to move from this point to somewhere else in the room, and you start moving, and I put a chair, right in front of you, what will happen? It's more like a stumbling block, so you will stop. Okay? Then I also say that I want you to move from this part of the room to that side. I have actually created a destination. I have created an indication of where I want you to go. If I put a chair in front of you, the best thing that you will do is that you will go around the chair and then you head to the target. So think about what I'm saying. The obstacles will be there. Even in your organized academic life, there are obstacles. There are situations when you find it very difficult to understand a particular topic. You don't say that because I can't understand this topic, that is the end of the world. No, you find other ways of going around it.
Find other ways of going around your obstacle. I'll take the final question. I think it is what lifts you up in your moments of, in the moments when you're down. I don't think it's all been rosy and cozy for your company, has it?
No. It hasn't been. And it will never be. For every single situation, because we are humans, there can never be a perfect situation. But at the end of the day, the important thing is that you have a certain goal. The goal is what drives the process. Because if that doesn't drive you, just like you said, you will have the situation where once you are down, it becomes difficult for you to get up. You must understand that this is something that you are actually looking for. It is the goal, and the goal is what will always make sure that you move in a particular direction.
Do we have
I
any
am
more
motivated
questions?
always by the fact that we have a certain level of understanding as far as our business process is concerned.
Okay, we have a lot more questions. So one at a time, when you ask your question, we'll take a response from him. So let's make it very snap. We've got lots of people wanting to ask questions. So you've got the microphone, your name and your question.
From Ghana Institute of Journalism. I want to know, to which extent has technology caused a change in banking?
Okay.
Okay. I think that technology has caused a complete change in banking. Banking started from the level where we're using ledgers. And ledgers are notebooks that you write transactions in them. Banking those days actually was the fact that you moved from wherever you are, you went to the bank, and then if you wanted to transact business with the bank, you had to move from wherever you are, and then you go to the bank and go and transact business. Technology has changed that. Now, banking no more is where you go, but banking is what you do. From the comfort of your home, you can actually do banking. That is what technology has done to banking. It's actually for a good thing, because it makes it possible for you to focus your strengths and your capabilities on other things instead of having the discomfort of going to the bank always to go and transact business.
Next question.
My name is Dario Kwesi from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. You said you were fascinated by the way bankers dress, so you had wanted to work in the bank. Was there any moment you felt you were at the wrong place?
Well, thank you. There was never a moment that I felt I was in the wrong place. I went into banking, like I said earlier on, because of the dressing. But I got in there and realized that it was a very good thing, because I am fascinated when, dealing with people, trying to help people develop whatever ideas that they have. And that is what banking created for me. And it has always been interesting. And that's why I've been in it for 30 years.
My name is Aisha Bantha from Ghana Institute of Journalism. My question is, do you think Bank of Ghana should move to sanitize the savings and loans sector?
Thank you. I don't know why you are using the word sanitize. I'm sure you must have heard it from somewhere. What I like to say is that Bank of Ghana understands clearly what is happening as far as the industry is concerned. As a regulator, the Bank of Ghana has a total and complete picture of what is happening in the savings and loan sector. There is the need to actually go through the process of ensuring that depositors are protected. That is what the central bank has as its objective. So I'm not in a position to actually say that yes, they should, but all that I'm saying is that Bank of Ghana has a better view of what it is. So if he feels that there's the need to do that to protect the depositor, of course, that would be the best thing for the central bank to do.
Okay, my name is Alimot Sadia Mohammed from Ghana Institute of Journalism. What do you make of the current happenings in the business sector?
Well, current happenings in the business sector,
what are the current happenings?
I presume
the fact that the banking crisis, like GN Bank has been locked.
So no mention of companies here. So she's essentially talking about the aftermath of the banking crisis.
Yeah, I think that what she's talking about is what do I make of the crisis in the banking sector. I think that it is unfortunate in the sense that nobody expected that we'll go through this phase. But then it has become necessary because, just like I said earlier on, the Bank of Ghana has the responsibility of ensuring that depositors are protected. So if the Bank of Ghana realizes that there is any sort of deficiency in any of the banks, it has the right to actually make sure that whatever deficiency is uprooted. And as they have said several times, in the past, no depositor is going to lose money, and nobody has lost money yet. So it was necessary, painful as it is. But I believe that by the time we go through that process, we'll have a stronger industry, and all of us will be the beneficiaries of that stronger industry.
I'm going to take questions from here.
I'm Effa Boateng from GIMPA. So the banking industry can be very stressful, especially when it comes to the working hours. So what advice would you give to women who want to enter into the banking sector?
I think that stress happens in any industry. The banking sector, cannot be, isolated, but it is part of the process of dealing with whatever we do, as far as our business is concerned. Because the customer is important, you go through the process of ensuring that the customer is satisfied. Sometimes that creates stress, but there are ways of managing the stress. I was expecting that you ask me how I manage, stressful situations. It is for purposes of ensuring that you are always, well organized, and you have the ability to come to work and be able to give up your best. The industry, is seeing quite a number of women, becoming part of it. I think that it is part of the process of the country developing. Women are lifting themselves up, currently, and ensuring that they are getting into every aspect of the business of the economy. So we have quite a number of women that are coming into the industry. And I must say that most of them are doing very well. It is not a stressful situation that no human being can handle. So don't be discouraged. There isn't stress that you will find difficult to manage.
Right. If you just joined us, this is Time with the Captains live here on TV3. We're also streaming live on Facebook. Tonight, we'll be joined by the Chief Executive Officer of Bond Savings and Loans PLC, Mr. George Ofosu-Hene. He's our captain for the month of October. We've also got students from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, as well as students from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. If you're watching at home, you can also join us with the views, comments, and suggestions on this program. We'll take a short commercial break. When we return, I'll find out from Mr. Ofosu-Hene what he looks out for when he's employing people. Stay tuned. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome back to Time with the Captains live on TV3. Our guest for the month of October is the Chief Executive Officer of Bond Savings and Loans PLC, George Ofosu-Hene. In the house also, we've got an audience who are made up of students from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, as well as the Ghana Institute of Journalism. We're also streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on TV3. Let me just quickly read to you some few messages from online. Lots of commendation for TV3. This one say, good job done, TV3. Where's the venue for the program? This question is from Rahim Mankind. He says, my question is, there's a rumor that banks use excessive loans to trap down their staff so they cannot leave the organization since they owe them. I want his views on this comment. Lots of comments also coming in. Do feel free to send your views and comments and suggestions on this program. Chief, what do you make of this question from Rahim?
I find it quite strange because there isn't anything like that. I don't know what he's talking about. I wish that he had put across some example. There isn't anything like that. You can't actually force anybody to take a loan to start with. But as banks, we try as much as possible to make sure that our members of staff are comfortable. That is where it comes from. But there's always a certain threshold. You can't borrow beyond a certain percentage of your monthly emoluments. So there isn't anything like you're actually trapped with loans, because you can't borrow beyond a certain point.
There's always been talk about the sharp divide, or if you like, the disconnect between academia and industry. That lots of people come out of school, having studied, and they get into the job market, and it's an entirely different ball game. As a chief executive, what do you look out for when employing people?
Very simple. I think the important thing is to look for people who have drive. That is one thing. Because you are looking for people who can identify with a vision and help ensure that it is actually, something that we are working towards. That is one. The other thing is that you are looking for people who have the ability to be self-motivated. What I say is that if you enter any system and your focus is the paycheck, I don't want to employ you. Because the paycheck is not what you should be motivated by.
That's important.
It is important, but it shouldn't be the main reason why you want employment. You actually are looking for an opportunity to become part of a story, an opportunity to actually ensure that you have a certain contribution to the development of an institution. It starts from there. Once you get that, you actually are onto somebody who will be able to contribute effectively to what you are looking for. So that's why I'm looking for drive. I'm looking for people who have a certain level of intelligence, because we are a learning organization. And because we are a learning organization, we want people who can be trained. And if you can be trained, it means that you have a certain level of intelligence. And everybody who has been able to enter a university has that level of intelligence that is required. But the issue becomes whether you have the drive, you have the right sort of attitude. Because you're going to be part of a team. If you're going to be part of a team, there has to be a certain arrangement that makes it possible for you to survive as part of the team.
As I prepare to take the next batch of questions, let me find out from you, what has been your biggest failure? What would you describe as your biggest failure in life?
I think it is the situation of trusting people beyond a certain level. Sometimes my difficulty is that I feel everybody thinks and will behave the way I do. And
how do you behave?
Well, I make integrity the hallmark of whatever I do. Integrity is very important. If I'm talking to you and I tell you something that I say that we'll meet at a certain time, by the time it gets to that time, you find me there. There are not too many of us that have that discipline. And sometimes that creates, problems in the process. So when you're setting up a company, you will, in situations where you go through the process of interviewing and you thought at the time that you had identified what you were looking for. But human beings are very, very strange creatures, because some of the people are able to craft things in such a way that they can hide their true identity. That is some of the things that have disturbed me over the period. You go through the process, the person is employed, then within a certain period, you realize that the person's true nature is showing up, and then it becomes an issue. That is sometimes part of the problem.
Right. Next batch of questions. I'll start with the lady there. Your name?
A student of Ghana Institute of Journalism. Sir, please, I would love to know what actually keeps you at night, or what keeps you awake at night, and also at what point in life did you consider yourself a success?
That's a deep question.
Yeah, it is a very deep question.
What keeps you awake?
I'd like to say that I sleep at night. so nothing keeps me awake. No, but the question is actually focusing on what occupies me. That is, what am I always focusing attention on? My focus is very simple, that this is a company that we have developed up to a certain point. We have so many milestones ahead of us that we want to achieve. We have a vision that is bigger than any of us, and we are focused on that. So this is something that keeps me on my toes all the time, and it's something that I think about. We are always looking for innovative ways to satisfy the customer, and that is one of the things that I'm always focused on.
Yeah.
My name is Kingsley from the Institute of Management and then Public Administration, which is GIMPA. I would like to know if you have plans for young entrepreneurs who are having financial difficulties as a startup, and if there is, how can one get on this? How can one apply?
We have a program that we deal with. We call them SMEs, small and medium scale, enterprises. And even though we feel that quite a number of these entrepreneurs have good plans, sometimes the problem is actually how it is crafted and how it can actually be put through the process of being implemented. Mind you, we are a company that is always looking for growth. We don't want to go through the process of just throwing money away. So we'll go through certain processes. We have an SME structure that will engage and ensure that there is a certain level of assessment and review. Once you go through that and we feel that this is a project that can go through the cycle of generating whatever it is to be able to service the loan that we give, we are able to go through it, and there isn't a problem at all. We have 13 outlets, in the country, okay? And any of these outlets, once you get to our website, you'll find, information relating to that. You can walk into any of our outlets, and we'll be able to help you with the process of engaging.
Next question. I'll take a lady.
I'm Jessica, and I want to know that concerning interest rates, does the Bank of Ghana give every company, like every banks, a specific rate they should go by, or like, so far as you are recognized by the Bank of Ghana, you can give your own rate, interest rate to your customers?
The Bank of Ghana does not set rates for any institution.
Commercial banks.
Or commercial banks for that matter, because there is competition and there are different sources of funding. So wherever you get your funds from, that is the genesis of what your interest rate is going to be like. And then also there is what we call risk premium. Risk premium is an indication of what I perceive to be the risk that I am taking by engaging and giving you money. That determines what kind of interest rates that I will offer you. I'm sure some of you are reading business, so you know what we are talking about. Yeah, that inflation. And there are all kinds of things that go into the pot for every institution. It doesn't come from the central bank.
Yes. Who has a microphone?
The measures you put in place to protect your company.
There are quite a number of measures that we put in place talking about protection means that we are ensuring that our company continues to survive and be able to present itself in a certain way. We have internal structures. There are processes and procedures that we go through that makes it possible for us to operate in a certain way. We ensure that every single arrangement that we have in place goes through processes that make it impossible for us to make mistakes. Of course, sometimes these processes do not work the way it's expected because we're dealing with human beings. I've said it time and again that one of the problems or one of the challenges that we have in this country is the fact that there are no structured arrangements that make it possible for you to mathematically or use certain matrices to determine how well a particular company will perform. In some of the developed countries, there are situations where everybody has a credit score. So once you get a credit score, it determines whether the person must be given the loan or not. We don't have that in this country. So what happens is that you develop your own structures and you go through the process of evaluating this particular company and you ensure that this company, when it takes the loan from you, will pay back. That is the way we deal with these things as far as our company is concerned.
I'm going to move to this side. Kindly pass the microphone here.
Yeah, my name is Samuel Bosman from Gempa. I just want to know your contributions that you've made in improving the banking sector and what has been the impact on the Ghanaian economy. And also my second question is, what are your expectations in the future?
Okay. In the first place, I'd like to say that there are quite a number of companies that we have provided support, over the period. When we started, there were some companies that, they had next to nothing in terms of their, operations. And we have grown these companies from levels that were more like, non-entities to areas where they have become real big, in the industries that they operate in. This has been one of the contributions that we have actually provided. We have also, on the other side, that is, we do loans and we also have investments. The investments that we do, we actually help people grow. Because you have the situation where you have some money and then you want to make sure that this money, multiplies. What we do is that this money comes to us. We help in the process of multiplying it. And that's, once you are helping individuals, you are helping companies, grow. It helps, the economy. My expectation going forward is that this country is actually benefiting from individuals and companies that are improving themselves. 10 years ago, there were quite a number of hiccups that we had when we were dealing with companies. A lot of these have been corrected. What I say is that the Ghanaian has become smarter. The Ghanaian now understands when you are talking economics, you will be surprised some of the people that operate in areas that you don't expect. Being able to understand what it means that we are talking about inflation and you are talking about pricing and you are talking about things that relate to ensuring that cash flows are managed in a certain way. So there is a certain level of perfection that is developing in the industry, and it will help every one of us.
I'll take my final two questions, and then we can wrap up for today's program. Yes?
My name is David Chawi, and I would like to know if your parents had an influence on you in any way. If yes, how? And if no, why?
Yes, how? If no, why?
My parents had major influence on me.
How?
Coming up. You remember I said earlier on that my parents were in the education sector. And my dad was also a Presbyterian priest. And what happened was that there was a certain level of, to start with, one, a certain level of communal living at home. That is how I developed the penchant of, being able to communicate and being able to operate in a certain way where relationships are nurtured. It started from the home. And my father was always focusing on ensuring that you do things the right way. He would always say that two things: keep it simple and make sure that you do the right thing. These were the two things. In fact, later on, I added one S. He always used to say KISS, that is K-I-S, keep it simple. And I say, keep it super simple. So that is how I have developed from there. My mother was very loving, very caring, and always ensured that there was a certain level of protection. And you know that there are certain situations where you find that there are certain things that you don't, want to talk about. My mother was one of the people who became more of a friend than a mother. And she will encourage you. What are the things that you are thinking about? What do you think I must know? And it can actually, go into all kinds of areas. And it really, really helped. When you have that level of support from home, it helps a lot. Because you know that sometimes peer pressure creates discomfort. And in your particular area, I think you know what I'm talking about. Peer pressure is an issue.
So we take a final question. I'll take a lady.
Somebody wasn't
Let me see the lady at the far corner there. Do you have the microphone? Can you pass the microphone over to her, the lady at the far corner? And make it very snappy.
Thank you. My name is Yaira, and I want to ask you, you believe that entrepreneurs are people with new ideas and wanted to exhibit it just to create employment, just as you did. But then I want to find out, what can you tell maybe young entrepreneurs like us who have the ideas, try to project it in the industry, but then we don't get the chance to produce whatever we want to do? Maybe financially, people keep saying that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily have to focus on your financial aspect. Maybe you have your ideas and everything ready, but then what else would you need before you be able to go ahead?
I think that you need a certain level of resilience. A certain level of resilience in the sense that you definitely come across obstacles. I always say that it doesn't take money to start business. It starts with an idea, it starts with a passion, and it starts with a certain capability to keep going. Because, it is not a process of you waking up one day and immediately everything has turned into, like a fairy tale. It doesn't happen. You must be prepared to go through the process. What I say is that you need to make sure that you are not making a living, but you are making an impact.
Not making a living, but making an impact. I'm afraid we've got to end it here. Ladies and gentlemen, please show him some love. Show him some love. Well, I've got to say a big thank you to you, Mr. George Ofosu-Hene, for joining us. I'm afraid we've got to end it here. We're spread for time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And thanks very much for you also who watch us at home, and also those who sent us your messages via Facebook and also Twitter. I want to say a big thank you to you for joining us, students from the Ghana Institute of Journalism, as well as students from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. This has been Time with the Captains. My name is Kwesi Asare. Hopefully, same time next month, we'll bring you another high-profile personality here on the program. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.